There is a language you speak perfectly, but you never learn to listen to. Have you ever noticed that pain always comes at the exact moment when you most need to stop? Not by chance, not by luck. Pain is not the universe being cruel to you. It is the universe being desperately honest. While you run, distract yourself, perform, consume, there is something inside you screaming in a language that modern life has taught you to ignore. And when all other forms of communication fail, when you are so numb that you no longer recognize your own inner voice, pain appears, not as an enemy, as a translator, as the last messenger of a message you've been putting off for years. Think about it. How many times have you felt something bothering you inside? A nameless anguish, an emptiness that cannot be filled, a restlessness that no distraction can solve, and simply moved on? You worked harder. You occupied your mind. You filled your schedule. You promised yourself you would stop to think when things calm down. But things never calm down. And that discomfort, that insistent whisper gets quieter and quieter. Not because it disappeared, but because you became deaf to the only voice that really matters, your own. This video won't teach you how to escape pain. It won't give you 5 steps to overcome suffering or 3 techniques to turn trauma into success. You've heard that 1,000 times, and you're still here watching this because deep down you know the pain you feel doesn't want to be overcome. It wants to be understood, and there's a huge difference between those two things. What I'm going to show you today is the secret language that pain speaks, and why you urgently need to learn to hear it before it has to scream even louder. We live in an age that has made anesthesia a virtue. Feeling uncomfortable? There's an app for that. Feeling sad? There's a new series. Feeling anxious? There's a motivational post. Modern life has built an endless arsenal of escapes disguised as self-care. And the most dangerous thing is that it works. For a while it works. You can postpone, distract yourself, push aside that feeling that something is deeply wrong, until you can't anymore. Because pain, contrary to everything you've been taught, is not a system failure. It is the system working. It is the way your soul has found to communicate when all other ways have failed. When you stopped listening to your intuition, when you ignored your fatigue, when you silenced the voice that said, "This isn't right." Pain is the increased volume of a whisper you've been ignoring for so long that it had to become a scream to finally be noticed. And now you're here, listening. But here's the fatal flaw in this silencing strategy we've all learned so well. When you decide not to listen to the whisper, life doesn't give up on you. It doesn't abandon you to your own fate. It just turns up the volume. And pain is the final loudspeaker of a message you've refused to hear your whole life. The question remains, will you continue to cover your ears, or will you finally have the courage to translate what it's saying? Let's start at the beginning, with the silence that came before the scream. There is a moment in almost everyone's life when the soul loses its voice, not all at once, not in a dramatic event that you can point to and say, "That was it." It is a slow, almost imperceptible process of disconnecting from yourself while life convinces you that this is what it means to mature. They tell you that growing up is learning not to complain, that being an adult is swallowing what you feel and moving on, that strength is enduring in silence, and you believe it. You stop crying when you need to cry. You stop screaming when you need to scream. You stop feeling when it hurts too much. And one day you wake up and realize that you no longer know who you are under all the layers of control you have built. Modern society is brilliant at this. It offers you endless entertainment so that you never have to be alone with your own thoughts. Think about it. When was the last time you spent 5 minutes without looking at your phone, without turning on the TV, without playing music, without doing anything at all except existing with yourself? It seems simple, but it's terrifying. Because in the silence, you are confronted with what you have been sweeping under the rug for years. The emptiness that no purchase can fill, the loneliness that no social network can solve, the feeling of living on autopilot, a life you never really chose. And then comes the cruelest part. You start to believe that this is normal, that everyone feels this way. That this feeling of always being tired, always empty, always performing for an invisible audience is just adult life. You medicalize what is existential. You positivity spin what needs to be questioned. You turn what should be a pause into productivity. And you keep going until your body, that wise animal you try to control, decides that enough is enough. Did you know that the word despair comes from Latin and literally means absence of hope? The philosopher Kierkegaard spent his entire life studying this state and came to a brutal conclusion. The most common form of despair is not the obvious one, the one you see. It is the silent one. It is the despair of not choosing to be who you are, of living a whole life playing a character that has nothing to do with you but that society has approved. And worse, you do it so well that you no longer even realize you are desperate. You just feel a tiredness that sleep cannot cure. an emptiness that entertainment cannot fill, a restlessness that no external achievement can calm. This is where modern anesthesia lives. Not in drugs, although they also work, but in the very structure of the life you were taught to live. Work until you are exhausted, consume until you are distracted, post until you are validated, repeat. And when that little voice deep down tries to say, hey, something's wrong, you have 10 different ways to silence it before you even hear what it has to say. You schedule a happy hour, you buy something online, you scroll through your feed until your mind is quiet. You do anything but stop and ask, what is this anguish trying to tell me? Because stopping is dangerous. Stopping means facing the possibility that you are living wrong, that the job that sucks your soul out of you may not be worth the car it pays for, that the relationship that leaves you empty may not be worth keeping just because you've been together for so many years, that the version of yourself you sell to the world may have nothing to do with who you really are when no one is looking. Stopping means confronting the possibility that you have gradually betrayed yourself in the name of a security that never came and a happiness that is always for later. And the body knows. The body always knows. It records every betrayal, every time you swallowed what you wanted to say, every moment you smiled when you wanted to cry, every day you woke up and pretended everything was fine when everything was falling apart inside. The body is the living archive of all the times you chose anesthesia over truth. And when you stop listening to your soul, when you silence your inner voice so much that it loses the right to speak, the body takes over. And the language it speaks is called pain. I'm not just talking about physical pain, although that is also a form of communication. I'm talking about that existential pain that wakes you up at 3 in the morning, that anguish that tightens your chest for no apparent reason, that emptiness you can't name but is always there, like a shadow. You try to explain it and can't. You go to the doctor and the tests come back normal. You try to convince yourself that it's just fussiness, weakness, lack of gratitude. But deep down you know something is wrong, not with the world, with the way you're living in it. And perhaps the scariest thing of all is this, the discovery that you're fine. Or rather, you're fine according to all external criteria. You have a job, you pay your bills, you have people around you, you function. But inside you feel empty. Inside you've been living on autopilot for so long that you no longer remember what it's like to feel anything real. Inside you're screaming in a language you've forbidden yourself to speak. And when you finally realize this, it's too late to pretend you didn't notice. Do you know what the most painful irony of it all is? It's that this anesthesia works so well that you actually believe you're happy. You look at your life and check all the boxes. Stable career, check. Long-lasting relationship, check. Acceptable social life, check. And yet, when you lie down at night, there's that hole, that nameless emptiness, that feeling that you're watching your own life from the outside, as if you were a spectator of your own existence. And you don't understand why. After all, you have everything you were told would make you happy. They just forgot to tell you that all of this was built on a false foundation, a version of yourself that isn't you. Because there is a fatal price to never stopping, to never being silent, to never allowing yourself to feel what you are really feeling. The price is this: the soul loses its ability to communicate in subtle ways. It stops whispering, it stops suggesting, it stops nudging you gently. And when you ignore all these signs, when you sweep everything under the rug for so long, it doesn't give up. It doesn't abandon you. It just changes its strategy. And the new strategy has a name you know well, but perhaps never truly understood. It's called pain. But there is a fatal flaw in this silencing strategy. When you decide not to listen to the whisper, life doesn't give up on you. It just turns up the volume. And pain, that unwanted visitor, that intruder you spend your life trying to expel, is not the villain in this story. It is the last ambassador of a territory you have abandoned. Yourself. Think of a child trying to get their parents' attention. First they speak softly, then a little louder, then they tug at their clothes, then they scream. And if no one hears them, they throw a tantrum, cry, and throw themselves on the floor. Not because they are rude, but because they desperately need to be seen. Pain works exactly like that. It is your inner self throwing an existential tantrum because you stopped paying attention to it so long ago that it had to resort to its last resort, knocking you down. And do you notice the timing? Pain never comes when you are well. It comes when you are furthest from yourself, when you are most lost in performance, most sunk in lies, most convinced that the life you have built for others to see is enough. That's when it knocks on the door, in the middle of a successful career that leaves you empty, at the height of a relationship that no longer has intimacy, the moment you finally got where you wanted to be and realized that the place is deserted. Pain doesn't choose these moments out of cruelty. It chooses them because they are the only moments when you are vulnerable enough to listen. Nietzsche, that German philosopher that everyone quotes but few truly understand, said something that many people distort. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Everyone uses this phrase as cheap motivation, as if it were about taking a beating and becoming a superhero. But what Nietzsche was saying is much deeper and much more brutal. He was saying that suffering is the only teacher that does not accept inattentive students. That pain teaches you a language you ignored, the language of the raw truth about who you are when all the masks fall away. Suffering for Nietzsche is not something to be avoided at all costs. It is something to be gone through with your eyes open, because it is in pain that you discover what you are really made of. It is when everything falls apart that you see what is left. And if you have the courage to really look without anesthesia, without escape, what is left is always you. Not the version you sell on Instagram, not the character you play at work, not the mask you wear with your family, but you, raw, real, frighteningly honest. And here's the paradox that no one tells you. Physical pain and emotional pain speak the same language. When you break your arm, your body sends a clear signal. Stop, don't use it. I need time to heal. But when your life breaks, when your marriage sinks, when your career collapses, when you look in the mirror and don't recognize the person staring back, your soul does exactly the same thing. It sends a desperate signal. Stop, don't continue like this. I need time to heal. The difference is that no one questions a broken arm. You don't try to think positive to heal a fracture. You don't post a motivational quote and hope the bone will realign itself. You stop, you immobilize. You give the body the time it needs to regenerate. But when the soul is in tatters, then you do the opposite. You work harder. You distract yourself more. You pretend more. You do everything except stop. Because stopping means admitting that you are broken. And admitting that you are broken in this society of mandatory happiness seems like failure. But the soul doesn't care what it looks like. It's not concerned with your image. It's concerned with your existential survival. And when you ignore it long enough, when you push the machine until it can't take it anymore, it doesn't abandon you. It goes on strike. It stops functioning on the terms you were imposing. You lose sleep. You lose your appetite. You lose your will. You lose the ability to feel pleasure. Not because you're sick, but because you're receiving an existential ultimatum. Either you change or I collapse completely. And that is pain as the ultimate ambassador. It doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to force you to face what you've been avoiding facing. It is the inconvenient messenger of truths you don't want to hear. This job is killing you. This relationship is draining you. You are living the life others thought you should live, not the one you need to live. You have betrayed who you are in the name of who others thought you should be. And these truths hurt. They hurt so much that you would do anything not to feel them. But the pain persists, because it knows that if you don't listen now, later it will be too late. The body is wise in this brutal way. It doesn't lie. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't accept half-truths. When you are living a lie, even if it is a well-told lie, even if everyone believes it, even if you almost believe it, the body knows. It records it. It files it away. And it demands payment. Not out of revenge, but because it is the guardian of your deepest truth, the one that the mind can deceive, but that the body never forgets. Have you noticed how some people get sick whenever they are about to do something they hate? Whenever they have to go to that event, meet that person, fulfill that obligation? It's not fussiness. It's not a lack of willpower. It's the body saying in the only language you can no longer ignore, I won't let you do this. Not this time. And you can call it somatization, psychosomatic, anxiety, stress. The names don't matter. What matters is that the body is speaking. And when the body speaks, either you listen or it knocks you down. Because in the end, pain is not an external invader. It is an internal rebellion. It's the real you refusing to continue being suffocated by the performative you. It's your soul barricading itself against the life you're forcing it to live. And the more you resist, the more you try to push, medicate, ignore, the louder it has to scream. Until one day you have no choice, you stop. Not because you want to, but because you can no longer move. And you know what's most frightening about all this? It's realizing that the pain was being kind all along. That those subtle signs you ignored, the chronic fatigue, the constant irritation, the discouragement that came and went, were delicate attempts to wake you up. But you were too busy proving to the world that you were fine, too busy keeping up appearances, too busy being productive, functional, approved. And when you ignore kindness for too long, what's left is brutality. Not because life wants to hurt you, but because it's the only way to make you stop. It's exactly there in that forced collapse that it finally manages to tell you what it's been trying to say for years. And the message is always the same, said in 1,000 different ways. You're living wrong. Not wrong according to morality or society. Wrong according to yourself. You've betrayed the most sacred agreement there is. the agreement with yourself to live a life that makes sense for who you really are. And that betrayal, my friend, that betrayal takes its toll, and you already know the name of that toll well. But here's the cruel paradox. Pain speaks a language that you understand perfectly deep in your soul, but you spend your whole life trying not to translate, because translating means admitting, and admitting means changing. And changing means facing the most primitive fear there is, the fear of discovering that you've wasted years of your life being someone you never were. Think about it. Since childhood, you have learned languages you will never use. You study grammar, memorize conjugations, memorize vocabulary. But there is a language you have spoken fluently since the day you were born, and no one ever taught you to read. It is the language of the body, the language of intuition, the language of that inner voice that nudges you when something is wrong. Even if everything seems fine on the outside, you speak this language perfectly, in whispers, in tightness in your chest, in sleepless nights, in irritations with no apparent cause. The problem is that you've learned to ignore every word. And pain? Pain is the dictionary of that language. It translates for you in terms that cannot be ignored, everything you've been pretending not to understand. When you feel that tightness in your chest every time you have to go to work, the pain is saying this place is killing you inside. When you feel that emptiness after leaving that gathering with people who are supposed to be your friends, the pain is saying these connections are empty. When you wake up in the middle of the night with that nameless anguish, the pain is saying you are living such a big lie that even sleep cannot protect you from it. But you don't want to listen. Because listening means having to do something about it. And doing something about it means dismantling the life you've built brick by brick, approval by approval, sacrifice by sacrifice. It means admitting to yourself that maybe you've spent the last 10, 15, 20 years building the wrong house. And who has the courage to do that? Who has the stomach to look at their own life and say, I was wrong, not in details, in the whole direction? So you do what everyone else does. You make excuses. It's just a phase. Everyone goes through this. When I get that promotion, it will get better. When the kids grow up, it will pass. When I lose weight, buy that, achieve that other thing. You postpone the translation. You push it off until later. You convince yourself that you misunderstood, that the pain is lying, that it's just stress, just fatigue, just a difficult moment. Any explanation will do, as long as it's not the truth. And do you know what the truth is? The pain isn't saying that your life is difficult. It's saying that your life isn't yours. That you woke up one day and realized that you're living the script that was written for you by your parents, society, other people's expectations, the need for approval. And now you're stuck in a play where you're both the actor and the audience, watching your own performance in horror while politely applauding at the end. Kierkegaard called this despair, but not the obvious despair, the kind that screams and cries and struggles. He was talking about silent despair, the despair of not wanting to be who you are, or worse, the despair of wanting to be who you are but not having the courage, of knowing deep down who you really are and actively choosing to live as someone else, choosing the mask, choosing the lie, choosing external approval over internal peace. And this kind of despair doesn't go away. It just changes address. It migrates from the conscious to the body, from the mind to the flesh, from words to pain. Pain is the way your soul found to speak when you took away its right to use words. It is the final language, the last resort, the language you cannot turn off even when you cover your ears. Because pain does not live in your head where you can rationalize, justify, repress. It lives in your body, where truth resides and does not accept negotiation. And the more you try to silence it with logic, this doesn't make sense. I should be happy. I have no reason to feel this way. The louder it needs to speak. Have you ever noticed how pain has surgical precision? It never comes in a generic form. It attacks exactly where you are most vulnerable, most dishonest, most disconnected. If the lie is at work, that's where it hits. If the lie is in your relationship, that's where it burns. If the lie is in the way you see yourself, it's your self-image that it destroys. Pain is not random. It is diagnostic. It shows you, with the precision of an emotional X-ray, exactly where you are living in disagreement with yourself. And the scariest thing is that everyone around you can keep pretending. Your coworkers pretend that everything is fine while they are dying inside. Your friends pretend to be happy while they are empty. Your whole family pretends to be functional while each one is isolated in their own emotional prison. And you look at them and think, why can't I do the same? Why can everyone else cope and I can't? But the right question would be, why can I still feel when everyone else has given up feeling? Because pain in this sense is a privilege. It's a sign that you're still truly alive, that there is still something in you that refuses to accept the lie as permanent, that you haven't completely surrendered to the automatic. Some people are so numb that they don't even feel pain anymore. Just emptiness, just numbness. Just this flat existence with no highs or lows, with nothing that makes you feel like you're really here. And when you reach that point when even the pain gives up on you, then it's really over. Until one day you understand pain is not the problem. Deafness is the problem. The refusal to translate is the problem. The fear of admitting what you've known for years is the problem. And at that moment, something changes. It doesn't solve anything. It doesn't heal. But it changes. Because for the first time, you stop fighting with the messenger and start reading the message. And the message, my friend, the message is always about you. About who you really are underneath all the layers of who you were taught to be. About the agreement you broke with your own soul. About the price you are paying for living a borrowed life. And perhaps this is where the greatest misconception about God, about the universe, about the meaning of life lies. You think you are being punished. But what if you are being called? Think about it for a second. Really think about it. All the great spiritual traditions, all the profound philosophies, all the mystics who have ever walked this earth say the same thing in different words. The sacred does not speak the language of comfort. It speaks the language of urgency. And urgency in the divine vocabulary has another name. It is called pain. This is uncomfortable because it destroys the fantasy we have been sold about spirituality. We have been taught that God is love, that the universe conspires in our favor, that everything happens at the right time. And that may even be true, but they forgot to tell us that divine love is not affection, it is confrontation. That conspiring in our favor sometimes means destroying everything we have built wrong, that the right time often comes disguised as personal catastrophe. Schopenhauer, that German philosopher whom everyone calls a pessimist but who was actually just brutally honest, said something frightening. Life is suffering, not as a curse, as a statement of fact. He looked at existence without the filters of obligatory optimism and saw what is there, obvious. Living hurts. Existing is painful, not because we are unlucky, but because being alive means being constantly in conflict with the world, with others, with ourselves. But here's what almost no one understands. Schopenhauer wasn't saying to give up on life. He was saying to stop pretending that it is something else. Because when you accept that pain is part of the deal, when you stop treating it like a manufacturing defect, something changes radically. You stop asking yourself, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this trying to teach me? And that single change in question transforms the victim into a student. Pain as pedagogy, not as divine punishment, but as the mandatory curriculum of a school you didn't ask to attend, but where you've been enrolled since birth. And what subject does this school teach? Only one. With 1,000 different names. Truth. Truth about who you are. Truth about what really matters. Truth about what you're doing with the only life you have. And the sacred, call it God, the universe, life, destiny, whatever name you choose, chooses pain as its language not because it is sadistic, but because it is functional. Because you can ignore all other languages. You ignore intuition. You ignore the signs. You ignore synchronicities. You even ignore the direct words of the people who love you when they try to warn you. But pain? You can't ignore pain. Pain forces you to stop. And stopping in this life of endless rushing is the most sacred act there is. That's why so many people describe their worst moments as turning points. Not because they are masochists, but because it was only when everything fell apart that they finally heard the call. It was only at rock bottom that they stopped digging. It was only when they lost everything that they realized what they really had, or what they never really had. The difference between pain that destroys and pain that reveals is just that, your willingness to listen. Two people can go through the same loss, the same crisis, the same collapse. One comes out of it bitter, blaming the world, building ever higher walls. The other comes out transformed, reborn, with a clarity about life that no achievement could ever give. The difference is not in what happened. It is in how each person interpreted the message. Because pain is not democratic in its lessons. It offers the same lesson to everyone, but each person learns something different, or learns nothing at all. Some people go through a deep crisis and come out the other side only more cynical, more closed off, more convinced that the world is hostile. And some people go through the same crisis and come out with a wisdom that illuminates the rest of their lives. Pain is neutral. What you do with it is what defines everything. And here's what I need to tell you, with all the honesty that this moment allows. If you're feeling pain right now, if you're going through something that breaks you, if you woke up today feeling like you can't take it anymore, you're not being abandoned by heaven. You're being summoned by it. Not to suffer for the sake of suffering, but to finally wake up from the comfortable lie and face the uncomfortable truth. I know this hurts to hear. I know you wanted a different kind of answer. You wanted me to say that it will pass, that it's just a phase, that soon you'll be happy again. But I can't deceive you like that, because the truth is you won't. You won't go back to being who you were before the pain, And do you know why? Because who you were before the pain is exactly who needed to die, so that who you really are could finally breathe. And if you feel like you need a path, a concrete direction to start making this journey consciously, I've created something for that. It's called the Codes of the White Rabbit. It's not self-help, it's not motivation. It's a philosophical map for those who are tired of living on autopilot and want to finally understand the hidden rules that govern their own lives. The link is in the description. But understand, the program will not take away your pain. It will teach you the language it speaks. And sometimes that's all you need to turn collapse into reconstruction. Because deep down, the secret theology of suffering is this: God, or whatever moves the universe, does not speak the language of superficial happiness. He speaks the language of profound transformation. And profound transformation, my friend, always begins with a specific kind of pain. That pain that won't let you continue being who you were. That pain that forces you to choose. Either you die to be reborn or you live dead for the rest of your life. And perhaps the most disturbing thing of all is to realize that this specific pain, the one you are feeling right now, is not random. It was designed specifically for you, for the specific lie you are living, for the specific mask you wear, for the specific betrayal you committed against yourself. It is not generic, it is yours. And only you can translate what it is saying. Only you can hear the call that comes wrapped up in it. Because in the end, pain is the language that heaven understands. But it is you who must learn to speak back. But understanding that pain is a message doesn't make listening any easier. Because what it reveals almost always is what you've spent your life avoiding looking at. And looking at it is like opening a door you locked so long ago that you forgot what's on the other side. Except you didn't forget. You just pretended you forgot. And now the door's opening by itself, creaking slowly, and you have nowhere else to run. Pain works like a mirror. But not one of those kind mirrors you look in the morning, fix your hair and move on. No, pain is the broken mirror. The one that reflects you in 1,000 pieces, in 1,000 angles you never wanted to see. It shows you not who you pretend to be, but who you are allowing them to turn you into. And that image is brutal. Because in it you see all the concessions you made. All the yes you wanted to say no to. All the no you swallowed with a fake smile. You see the marriage that turned into a roommate agreement. The two of you sharing the same space, the same bills, the same bed, but living emotionally separate lives. Do you remember when there was intimacy? When you really talked? When there was genuine desire and not just marital protocol? The pain forces you to see that you've been in a dead relationship for years, but that it continues to function because it's convenient, because it's safe, because it's what's expected, and you swallow it every day with a mechanical good morning and a soulless kiss on the forehead. You see the job that pays the bills but sucks the life out of you. That job you took just for now, and that has turned into 15 years of your existence. You count the days until Friday. You drag yourself out of bed on Monday. You feel your stomach churn when you open your email. And yet you go. Every day you go. Because you have bills to pay, because you have a status to maintain, because at least it's stable. But the pain doesn't accept these excuses. It shows you the real price. You are trading the only life you have for a salary that allows you to survive so you can continue working. You see the friendships that are just social performance. Those people you hang out with not because you want to, but because we haven't seen each other in a while. Those conversations that are just resume updates disguised as small talk. Those forced laughs, those empty hugs, that social theater that everyone acts out because no one has the courage to admit, we're not close, we're just close. And there's a huge difference between those two things. But the most brutal thing pain shows you isn't about others, it's about you. It shows you the person you've become in order to fit in, to be accepted, to not cause trouble. Do you remember who you were before you started policing yourself? Before you started measuring every word, every gesture, every opinion so as not to displease anyone? Pain brings you face to face with the version of yourself that you abandoned in favor of a palatable, marketable, socially approved version. And perhaps the most painful thing of all is realizing that you did this consciously. It was no accident. It wasn't imposed on you. It was a choice. One choice at a time, one cowardly yes at a time, one small betrayal at a time. Until you woke up one morning and no longer recognized the face in the mirror. Not because you had aged, but because the person who should have been behind that face was gone. And in its place was a well-behaved substitute that everyone approves of, but that you deep down despise. Jung, that Swiss psychologist who understood the human soul better than most, said something that should be engraved at the entrance to every therapy, every process of self-knowledge, every inner journey. You don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by becoming aware of the darkness. Translating from psychological jargon into plain English, you don't heal yourself by fantasizing about who you want to be. You heal yourself by facing who you have become. And facing who you have become means looking at your shadows, at the parts of yourself that you hid because they were not appropriate, at the desires you killed because they were not practical, at the dreams you buried because they were not realistic, at the anger you swallowed because it was not polite, for the sadness you masked because it wasn't productive. Pain is the spotlight that illuminates all of this. It doesn't let you keep pretending. It tears down the curtains, destroys the walls, breaks the lying mirrors, and it forces you to see what you've become, to see the price you've paid. See that the version of yourself that you kill a little bit every day is precisely the version that life is desperately trying to save. Because the great irony of pain is this: it doesn't attack who you pretend to be. It defends who you really are. It is the immune system of the soul, rejecting everything that is false, expelling everything that does not belong, desperately trying to return you to yourself before it's too late. And do you know what the scariest moment of this revelation is? It's not when you see what you've lost. It's when you see what you've gained in its place. You traded authenticity for approval. You traded freedom for security. You traded passion for convenience. You traded truth for superficial peace. And now you look at what you have in your hands and realize none of it is worth what you paid for it. Approval is empty. Security is imprisonment. Convenience is slow death. Peace is only the absence of conflict, not the presence of life. The broken mirror shows you this without mercy. It shows you that you have built an entire life based on fear. Fear of rejection, fear of loneliness, fear of failure, fear of being who you really are and discovering that it is not enough. So you created this edited, filtered, safe version of yourself. And you sold it so well that even you believed it for a while, until the pain came and destroyed the fantasy. And when you finally see all of this, when the broken mirror shows you all the angles, all the lies, all the betrayals, you have two options. You can pick up the pieces and try to put the old image back together, pretend you didn't see it, move on as if nothing happened. Or you can do the only thing that turns pain into wisdom. You can leave the mirror broken. You can accept that the old image will not return. And that maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what needs to happen. Because sometimes you need to see yourself shattered to finally understand that you were never whole living that lie. And this is where the journey splits into two radically different paths. You can try to silence the pain again, pick up the pieces of the mirror and pretend it never broke. Or you can do the one thing that modern life has taught you never to do. You can respond. Responding is not reacting. Reacting is what you do automatically. You feel pain and seek immediate relief, anything that will make it stop hurting. Responding is different. Responding is sitting with the pain. It's looking it in the eye. It's asking, with all the sincerity you can muster, what are you trying to tell me? What do you need from me that I'm not giving you? And then, the hardest thing of all, it's staying quiet and really listening to the answer. This goes against everything you've been taught. You've been taught that feeling pain is weakness, that sitting still with discomfort is unproductive, that you need to get over it, move on, turn the page. But what if the page isn't ready to be turned? What if you need to read it again, this time slowly, paying attention to the lines you skipped the first time because you were in a hurry to get to the happy ending? Consciously going through pain is not glamorous. It's not that journey of transformation you see in movies with an inspiring soundtrack and fast editing showing you rising from the ashes in 3 minutes. It's slow. It's ugly. It's you crying in the shower at 7 in the morning because you finally allowed yourself to feel what you've been repressing for years. It's you waking up in the middle of the night and having to face truths about yourself that you'd rather never have discovered. It's you realizing one day at a time that you no longer know who you are when you take off all your masks. And you know what makes it even harder? No one will applaud you for it. No one will give you a medal for having the courage to dismantle your own life in order to rebuild it honestly. The people around you will actually think you're crazy. You had everything. Why are you throwing it away? Because everything was nothing when it was built on top of who you are not. But try explaining that to those who are still asleep inside their own lie. Try explaining that you preferred the painful truth to the comfortable lie. They will look at you as if you have gone mad. And maybe you have. Maybe sanity in this sick society is the most dangerous madness. Maybe waking up in a world of sleepwalkers is the deepest loneliness there is. But there is a brutal difference between sterile suffering and transformative suffering. Sterile suffering is the kind that traps you in a cycle. You feel pain, you run away, you return to the same life. The pain returns, you run away again. It is the hell of emotional Sisyphus. You push the rock up the mountain only to see it roll back down eternally. Transformative suffering is the kind you go through with your eyes open. You feel the pain, you sit with it, you ask what it wants, you listen to the answer, and you change. Concretely, not with positive affirmations, not with visualizations, but with real actions that reconfigure your life according to who you really are. You leave that job that drains you. You end that relationship that empties you. You stop going to those places that make you pretend. You start saying no. You start saying yes. You start existing in a way that makes sense to you, not to the invisible audience you spend your life trying to impress. And here is the final paradox of the journey. The pain does not disappear. You don't get to the other side and become this enlightened person who never suffers again. You arrive on the other side and become someone who understands the language that pain speaks. Someone who recognizes the signs before they need to turn into screams. Someone who knows the difference between pain that warns and pain that only echoes old traumas. Someone who is no longer afraid to feel because they understand that feeling is not the problem. Running away from feeling is the problem. The conscious journey transforms you into a translator of your own soul. You learn to read the whispers. You realize when you are betraying yourself before betrayal becomes a habit. You feel the beginning of disconnection and stop, adjust, reconnect. You no longer wait for total collapse to change direction. You make fine, daily, honest adjustments. And that's what it means to be truly alive. It's not never feeling pain. It's knowing what to do when it comes. It's turning it from an enemy into an advisor. But to get there, you have to make the journey. And the journey is forbidden not by law but by social convention. It's the most radical act in a society that sells you anesthesia as self-care. It's you saying, I'm going to feel this. I'm going to go through this. I'm going to learn from this. It's you refusing the shortcut, the easy escape, the convenient distraction. It's you choosing the truth even when the lie is more comfortable. And do you know what happens when you make that choice? When you finally decide to respond to the pain instead of running away from it? You discover that it was waiting for that all along. That every time you ran away, it just saved the message for next time. That it's not your enemy trying to destroy you, but your oldest ally trying to save you from yourself. That all it ever wanted was to be heard. And now that you're listening, now that you've stopped fighting and started talking, something changes deeply in the way you exist in the world. You stop living defensively. You stop waking up every day preparing for the next battle against yourself. You begin to live in partnership with your own depth. Pain becomes a compass, not punishment. It shows you when you are losing yourself again, when you are beginning to betray yourself again, when you are choosing the comfortable lie over the uncomfortable truth. And because you have learned its language, you can correct your course before you need another total collapse. That, my friend, is what separates those who live from those who merely survive. It separates those who are awake from those who are sleeping with their eyes open. It separates those who have the courage to feel from those who have the courage only to pretend that everything is fine. And once you cross that line, once you make the conscious crossing, you will never be who you were again. Not because the pain destroyed you, but because it rebuilt you in a way that no one else can ever demolish. And when you finally learn this secret language, something changes in you that no quick therapy, no motivational coach, no self-help phrase could ever touch. You develop a kind of wisdom that only exists on the other side of consciously traversed pain. It's not knowledge that comes from books. It's not insight that comes from podcasts. It's visceral wisdom, engraved in bone, earned in blood. It's the wisdom of those who have died and been reborn in the same life. Of those who have seen everything fall apart and discovered that there was still ground beneath the rubble. Of those who have lost everything they thought they were and found something more real, more true, more indestructible beneath the ruins. You are no longer the person you were before the pain, but you are also not the person destroyed by pain. You are the third thing, the one that only exists because you went through it. And this transformation gives you something that those who are asleep will never have: radical discernment. You develop an internal sensor that detects lies from miles away. Not other people's lies, that's easy, but your own lies. The ones you tell yourself to keep fitting in, to keep pleasing others, to keep being who they think you should be. You realize the moment you start betraying yourself again. And because you already know the price of that betrayal, because you've already paid with your own soul, you stop, you correct yourself, you come back, you never live on autopilot again. Impossible, because pain has taught you that autopilot kills, that living without paying attention is slow death, that you can be breathing, working, functioning and still be dead inside. And you promised yourself, on that dark night, at that rock bottom, in that moment of total collapse, that if you survived, you would never forget. You would never sleep again. You would never let life become background noise while you perform for the audience. Nietzsche had a concept that everyone quotes but few really understand. Amor fati, love of fate, love of what is necessary. It's not about liking pain. It's not about romanticizing suffering. It's about looking at everything that happened, all the pain, all the loss, all the collapse, and saying, I wouldn't change a thing, because that's exactly what brought me here. And here, as painful as it was to get here, is where I needed to be. It's saying, That marriage that ended, it taught me what true intimacy is and what is just disguised convenience. It's saying, that job that destroyed me, it showed me that I was worth more than I was accepting. It's saying, that crisis that almost killed me, it forced me to find a strength within myself that I would never have known I had if everything had been easy. It's turning every scar into wisdom, every wound into a teacher, every collapse into rebirth. And the strangest thing of all is that you start to see the world with completely different eyes. The people around you are still running, still distracting themselves, still pretending. And you look at them with a mixture of compassion and sadness because you remember. You remember when you were there too, sleeping too, thinking that was living. And you want to wake them up. You want to shake them and say, you don't have to wait for total collapse. You can wake up now, but you know it doesn't work that way. No one wakes anyone else up. Everyone wakes up in their own time. And that time always comes disguised as catastrophe. You also develop a brutal tolerance for authenticity. You can't stand empty talk anymore. You can't stand superficial relationships anymore. You can't stand environments that force you to wear a mask anymore. Because you've already lived without a mask. You've experienced what it's like to truly exist. Raw, honest, vulnerable. And once you've tasted that, everything that isn't real becomes unbearable. You prefer true solitude to false company. You prefer honest silence to performative conversation. You choose painful truth over comfortable lies. Always. And people think you become difficult, demanding, complicated. But you haven't become difficult. You just stopped accepting emotional crumbs and calling it a feast. You just started demanding from yourself and others the same level of honesty that pain taught you to have. And that drives people away. A lot of people. But the people who stay, they are worth every second of loneliness you went through to get to them. Pain is God's secret language because it's the only one that doesn't accept lies. It's not impressed by your masks. It's not distracted by your performances. It doesn't believe your excuses. When everything else fails, when you're so lost that you no longer recognize your own voice, pain appears. Not to destroy you, to translate you back to yourself. And maybe in the end, heaven doesn't speak this language because it's cruel, but because it's the only language that can still reach you when you're too far from home. Pain is the GPS of the soul. It only hurts when you're off course. And the further you are from who you really are, the louder it needs to speak. Until you stop, until you listen, until you come back. The question was never whether the pain would speak to you. The question has always been, will you finally learn to listen? Because it's speaking now, as you watch this, as something in you recognizes every word I've said, as you feel that familiar tightness in your chest that says he's talking about me. It's speaking. The question is, what will you do with the message? And here's what I need you to understand. There is no right time to start. There is no perfect day to stop pretending and start really living. There is no when things calm down, because things never calm down. The time is now. The pain is already there, screaming. The only choice you have is to continue covering your ears or finally start translating. The first step is the simplest and the most difficult at the same time. Stop. That's it. Stop running. Stop distracting yourself. Stop filling your schedule, your mind, your life with noise. Sit with yourself, literally sit, in a chair, on the floor, wherever, and stay there. 5 minutes, no cell phone, no music, nothing, just you and the silence. And when the pain comes, and it will come because it has been waiting for so long, don't run away. Breathe. Feel where it is in your body, and ask, what do you need to tell me? And then listen, really listen. Without judging, without trying to solve it immediately, without rationalizing, just listen. It will hurt. It will be uncomfortable. You will want to pick up your cell phone, turn on the TV, do anything to get you out of there. But if you hold on, if you stay, if you listen, something will start to change. Not all at once, not dramatically, but little by little, you will begin to understand the language. And once you understand, you'll never be alone again. Because pain ceases to be your enemy and becomes the most honest voice you have. Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer in the comments as honestly as you can. What is the pain you've been ignoring for the longest time? The one you know is there, but you pretend not to see. Write it down below. You don't have to tell the whole story. Just name it, because naming it is the first step to overcoming your fear. If you've made it this far, you've already taken a step beyond most people. You watch the videos. You reflect on each idea. Now the question is, how far do you want to go with this? If you want to take the next step and truly apply this knowledge to your life, the White Rabbit codes are ready for you. The link is in the video description. Remember, success is a decision. The choice is yours. Count on me and follow the White Rabbit.